In 2026, the story of Massachusetts is no longer just about high taxes and expensive rent. A quiet crisis is unfolding at the very places you would least expect to feel vulnerable. While the state government promotes a vision of a booming tech hub, over 40,000 residents have already decided that the cost of staying is simply too high. This isn't just about the money leaving the state. It is about the safety and the deteriorating reality of the streets we drive on every single day. Today, we are looking at the data the local news avoids discussing. We have identified 5 cities where the power grid is failing, and the residents themselves are issuing a warning to travelers. They will tell you to keep your doors locked and your eyes on the road. In these locations, expecting the lights to stay on has become a calculated risk that many are no longer willing to take. This is the truth about the cities falling behind fast in 2026. My journey began in the Pioneer Valley, where Holyoke appeared as a painful reminder of a lost golden age. But in early 2026, a massive budget shortfall forced the city to slash spending on basic public utility maintenance. What most people don't realize is that this resulted in hundreds of streetlights going completely dark in the commercial districts surrounding the old mills. When the sun goes down, the gas stations along the main corridors become isolated islands in the shadows. But here's the real issue. Local police data shows a sharp increase in petty crime at these unlit stations over the last 6 months. The headlines might talk about green energy and new developments near the canal, but the reality on the ground is much grittier for the people living there. Residents on local forums warn that stopping at a pump after 10 p.m. is an invitation for trouble. It is a city where the infrastructure of the past is failing to protect the citizens of the present. The contrast between the wealthy suburbs and these dark corners of Holyoke has never been more apparent. If you're a retiree looking for stability, ask yourself, how much is a home worth if you can't even see the sidewalk in front of it after dark? Moving further west, we reach Springfield, where the paradox between record high taxes and poor public services is pushing residents to the absolute brink. And this is where things get serious. Springfield now has one of the highest crime-to-tax ratios in the entire state. This means you are paying top dollar for safety and services that are simply not being delivered. But importantly, it's the grid that is truly suffering. I saw weariness in the eyes of longtime shop owners as they struggle to protect their property in a city where security has become a luxury. What most people don't realize is that this instability has triggered a wave of property sell-offs, driving home values in certain zones to rock bottom. Little do people notice that the disconnect between reality and policy has eroded public trust, leading to the evaporation of life savings held in real estate. If you are a homeowner here, you aren't just fighting the market, you are fighting a system that seems to have forgotten you exist. I want you to think about a story I heard from a rideshare driver recently. She was driving through a dense commercial zone and realized her gas light was on, but the street lights were out for blocks. She was literally too afraid to stop at the station because of the loitering and the lack of lighting. She had to risk running out of fuel just to reach a safer town. And this is where the real issue lies. When a hardworking person is too afraid to fulfill a basic necessity, what is left of the Bay State dream? Are we paying for progress? Or are we just paying to be left in the dark? Of course, not every neighborhood is experiencing this. Some areas are still holding relatively stable and offer a safer environment for now. But the important thing is that the gap between the protected zones and the neglected streets is growing wider every month. Moving deeper into the south coast, we find Fall River, a city currently haunted by the ghosts of its industrial past and the broken promises of its future. For years, the state government pledged that the South Coast Rail would bring a new era of prosperity to this historic waterfront. But in early 2026, the only thing that has truly arrived is a massive 12% increase in property taxes and a power grid that is gasping for air. While the headlines celebrate the rebound of the coastline, the reality is that the local transformers are being pushed to their absolute limits. The data is chilling for any homeowner looking to preserve their equity. In certain districts, the electrical load has increased by 40% due to modern housing density. Yet the physical grid has not seen a significant upgrade since 1975. This creates a phantom effect where the lights do not just go out, they flicker and surge, damaging the expensive appliances you have spent your life savings on. But the important thing is that the delivery fees here are now among the highest in New England. What most people don't realize is they are paying a premium price for a service that has become a total game of chance. I recently spoke with a retired textile worker who told me he keeps 3 heavy-duty flashlights at every table in his house because he just never knows anymore. He described the fear of his oxygen machine failing during a midnight surge as a quiet death sentence. It is a heartbreaking reality for those who built this city with their own hands and now feel forgotten by the State House. And here is the real point. When the grid is this fragile, the sense of community begins to erode. People stop looking out for each other when they are too busy worrying about whether their pipes will freeze during the next unannounced outage. Think about this. If you were in his shoes, would you stay in a house that feels more like a trap every time the wind blows? Some residents argue that the state is intentionally letting these older cities fail to clear the way for new developers. Do you think this is a deliberate policy of neglect? Or is the government just that incompetent? But what we found in the #1 city shocked even local analysts, and it changes everything about how you should think about buying a home in Massachusetts. Of course, not every neighborhood in Fall River is experiencing this the same way. Some areas closer to the newer developments are still holding relatively stable for now. Our journey brings us next to Lynn, a city caught in a vicious cycle of urban regeneration and physical decay. The downtown area is filled with beautiful 3D renderings about a high-tech future. But few realize that the ground beneath their feet is literally working against them in 2026. Rising sea levels and more frequent storm surges are sending salt water into the underground electrical vaults that were never sealed for the 21st century. This is not just about environmental theory. It is about the daily reality of corrosion that is eating away at the city's power supply. The frequency of nuisance outages in Lynn has doubled in the last 18 months alone. But the important thing is that the cost of living here continues to climb as if the city were a safe suburban haven. I saw a report indicating that investors who bought in early are now desperately trying to unload their luxury condos, with price cuts hitting 15% in just 30 days, before the next major surge takes the grid down for good. Little do people notice that the regeneration is happening on a foundation of sand. And this is where things get serious. The disconnect between reality and policy has caused a total collapse of public trust. I heard about a woman who was trapped in an elevator of a brand new high-rise for 4 hours because a minor surge shorted out the local substation. She told me the silence in that dark box was the most terrifying experience of her life because she realized no one was coming to help. These are the stories that do not make it to the glossy real estate brochures or the evening news. Is the view of the Atlantic worth the fear of being trapped in the dark without a way to call for help? I want to ask you, is it ethical for developers to keep selling $700,000 condos in a city where the primary infrastructure is literally rotting from salt water? Are buyers being scammed, or is it their responsibility to do their own research on the power grid? Some parts of the Lynn shoreline and the neighboring suburbs are still attracting retirees thanks to better long-term stability. Some areas are still holding relatively stable due to recent targeted upgrades. Finally, we reach the city that holds the top spot on our list, and it is a place that locals warn you about more than any other: Brockton. Once known as the City of Champions, in 2026, it has become the epicenter of urban neglect and infrastructure failure. It currently holds the highest crime to utility reliability ratio in the entire state of Massachusetts. This means you are paying top-tier delivery fees for a grid that fails at the first sign of a summer storm or a winter breeze. The data here is staggering for anyone trying to protect their home value in their golden years. Police response times in certain zones have hit record lows, often exceeding 20 minutes for even urgent calls. But here's the real issue. When the power goes out, those response times drop even further as the city descends into a no-go zone for many. I stood at a once bustling intersection in Brockton recently and felt the unsettling silence of a dying real estate market. It is the kind of silence that tells you the government has simply moved on. Little do people realize that the energy trap here is a death spiral for your property value. Corporate landlords have taken over large portions of the residential blocks, replacing a sense of community with a transient and unstable population. Banks are starting to notice, and I have seen reports of lenders tightening their requirements or outright denying loans for Brockton properties because the infrastructure risk is too high. If you are a retiree looking to protect your nest egg, this is the final warning. The lights are not just going out. The very dream of escaping your predicament is becoming a dead end. I want to ask you a serious question about the state of our home. If you saw your gas gauge hitting empty in the middle of a dark street in Brockton, would you risk the stop, or would you keep driving until the engine died? Is the sense of safety in Massachusetts worth the price we are all paying in taxes? Let me know in the comments if you have ever felt like a stranger in your own city, because the basic services you pay for simply don't exist when you need them most. Of course, not every area in Brockton is facing the same challenges. Some pockets still have residents fighting to maintain their neighborhoods, and some streets are still holding relatively stable for now. The crisis we have witnessed in these 5 cities is not just about crime statistics or the price of fuel. It is a direct result of a policy failure that prioritizes the wealthy elite while leaving the industrial heart of the state to suffer. Massachusetts is becoming a playground for the rich and a trap for the working class, who can no longer afford to live in the cities they built. And this is where things get serious. The map has been reset, and the fever of the last decade has finally broken. If you are one of the thousands who have already left Massachusetts for states like Florida or Texas, was the move worth it for your peace of mind? And if you are still here fighting to make it work, are you staying because you believe in the future, or are you just waiting for your turn to leave? What most people don't realize is that the Bay State dream is fading fast for those who are paying the highest price. Today I want to hear your opinions, because your experience is the most important data we have. If you live in Brockton or any of the cities we discussed, please share your story in the comments below. Is the police response time as bad as the 2026 report suggests, or are we missing something? But most importantly, tell us whether you'll stay to fight for the future, or if you've already started looking for a way out. Please stay safe on the roads, and thank you for contributing to the discussion about the future of Massachusetts.